Hey everyone, and welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be opening up the medical mystery box today and taking a look at some really fascinating surgical techniques. Ready?
Absolutely.
Today, we are going to be talking about repairing heart valves and something called an aortic aneurysm.
These are both procedures that are done on the heart. They're both, and we can think about the heart as this finely tuned machine. And sometimes even the best machines need a little bit of help to keep running smoothly.
I love that analogy. That's such a great way to think about it. And I think it's not just the what that's interesting to me. Obviously, what a surgeon does is incredible,
Mm-hmm.
but also the why. It matters to us, right? Like as someone who, what if my heart acts up?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And it's really empowering to know the why behind things so you can make informed decisions about your health.
Totally. So let's start with heart valves, kind of the entry point here. Imagine these tiny little doors inside your heart that control the way that blood flows,
Yeah.
right? It seems like such a simple thing. But what happens when one of those doors gets stuck?
Yeah.
What happens then?
So that's when we have a problem. And when that happens, that's called stenosis. And basically what that means is that the leaflets of the valve, they become stiff or they become thickened, and so that the valve can't either fully open or it can't fully close.
Okay.
And so that can be a real problem for people.
Yeah, it's like a door. Like you think about if a door hinge gets rusty, like you really have to pull on that thing to get it open. And then over time, what happens? Like it just wears down.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The heart's a muscle and it can only pump so hard for so long.
exactly.
Eh,
And I can only record this podcast for so long before I'm completely worn down too.
you're right.
Okay, so what do surgeons actually do to fix this problem? Let's say, a valve is really giving someone a hard time.
So there are several things that can be done. The the least invasive would be something called a valvuloplasty.
Cool.
And basically that's where they go in and they try to reshape the valve. They try to open it up.
Okay.
Another option would be something called an annuloplasty. And in that case, what they're really trying to do is they're trying to tighten the ring around the valve to help it function better.
Okay.
And then finally, if those aren't options, then they may have to do a valve replacement.
Gotcha. So those are kind of like you doing a little tune up.
Hmm.
And then if it's really bad, you got to like replace the whole thing.
Exactly.
Okay. But can we talk about the first one for a second?
Hmm.
Because I was reading this and it blew my mind.
Hmm.
It blew my mind. They thread a catheter through an artery in your leg all the way to your heart,
Hmm.
and then they put a balloon in it to kind of open it up.
Yeah, that's essentially right. And it's amazing because, years ago they wouldn't have been able to do that. They would have to do open heart surgery. But nowadays with these catheters, they can do it with a much less invasive procedure.
That's incredible. It's like a medical thriller or something,
She
right?
did.
Like threading this thing through, your veins and your arteries, and then bam, like inflate a balloon, and then you're good to go. Incredible. Okay, so let's say though that it's too far gone, right? Like a valve it's just not going to work, and so you have to do a valve replacement. What happens then?
Yeah. So there are two main types of replacement valves. One is called a mechanical valve, and the other one's called a biologic valve.
Okay, so let's break those down a little bit because I think people listening have probably heard these terms but
Sure.
might not totally know what they mean.
Yeah. So a mechanical valve is basically just that. It's a mechanical valve. It's made of metal or plastic,
Okay.
and they're very durable. They can last a lifetime actually.
Wow.
The downside to mechanical valves is that people that have them, they have to be on blood thinners for the rest of their lives.
Okay, so it's kind of like a trade-off, right? You get this thing that could last forever,
Right.
but you have to take medication.
Right.
Okay. So what about the biologic valves? Those are the other option, right?
Right. Biologic valves are made from animal tissue, so either cow or pig.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes they can be from a human donor.
Oh, interesting.
And so the advantage of a biologic valve is that people that have those, they don't have to be on blood thinners.
Okay, so that's a huge, huge plus for a lot of people.
It is. It is. However, biologic valves, they don't last as long as mechanical valves. So after, 10 or 15 years, they may have to be replaced.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like choosing between, like a really reliable sedan and maybe a sporty car, right? The sedan might not be as flashy,
Right.
but it could last you, 20 years.
Right. Yeah, and that's something that patients would talk to their doctors about when they're making that decision.
Exactly. What's the best fit for your lifestyle?
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So we've talked about heart valves.
Yeah.
Let's move to this other thing that you mentioned, aortic aneurysms. Now, when I read this in the source material, it was described as a silent threat, which I have to say immediately sent chills down my spine. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, so an aneurysm is basically when you have a weakening in the wall of a blood vessel. And so it forms this bulge or this ballooning out of the blood vessel. And in this case, we're talking about the aorta, which is the main artery that carries blood from the heart to the rest of the body.
So this is major, major stuff.
It is. It is. Yeah.
And we're not just talking about like any blood vessel. We're talking about the main highway
The main highway out of the heart.
out of the heart. Okay, so what happens? Like, how does this happen? Is it something where you would know immediately if you had it, or is it one of those things that kind of like sneaks up on you?
Yeah, that's what's scary about them. They often don't cause any symptoms, at least not in the early stages.
Oh, no.
But as they grow larger, then they can start to press on nearby organs or tissues and cause problems.
Oh, gosh. And then if it ruptures,
That can be life-threatening.
yeah. Okay, so this is definitely something you don't want to mess around with. So how would you even know? Like, how would somebody know if they had an aneurysm?
Well, a lot of times they're found incidentally when people are getting imaging tests for other reasons.
Okay,
Like if someone has an X-ray or a CT scan of their chest or abdomen for some other reason,
gotcha.
sometimes they're found that way.
Okay,
But if someone's having symptoms, then that would be a clue,
okay.
and they might need to have some specific tests to look for one.
Okay, so what kind of tests are we talking about here?
So, one of the most common tests is an echocardiogram, or what we call an echo,
Okay,
and that's basically an ultrasound of the heart,
okay.
and it uses sound waves to create pictures of the heart.
So it's kind of like when you go in for a pregnancy scan. It's like the same
Right.
kind of technology, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And does that always work? Or are there cases where they have to do other kinds of tests?
Yeah, sometimes they need to do more specialized tests like a CT scan or an MRI.
Okay.
And those tests can give them more detailed pictures of the aorta and any aneurysms that might be present.
So it's like you start with like the less, intense tests, and then you kind of work your way up if you need more information.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's say, they do all these tests and they find an aneurysm. What happens then? What's the game plan?
Yeah, so that really depends on the size of the aneurysm and how fast it's growing. If it's small and it's not growing very fast, then they might just recommend monitoring it, with regular imaging tests to make sure that it's not changing. But if it's large or if it's growing rapidly, then they might recommend surgery to repair it.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like a, wait and see approach if it's not too serious.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's really causing problems, then you have to be more aggressive.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about that surgery because it sounds pretty intense. Like what does that actually involve?
Well, there are two main types of surgery for aortic aneurysm.
Okay.
One is called open aneurysm repair, or OAR, and the other is called endovascular aneurysm repair, or EVAR.
Okay.
So open repair is a major surgery, and they basically they make an incision in the abdomen to access the aorta, and then they open up the aneurysm and they remove the weakened section of the aorta, and then they replace it with a graft.
Okay, wait. Hold on a second. So they're cutting open your abdomen, they're going in, they're taking out the weak part of your aorta,
Yeah.
and then what are they replacing it with?
Yeah. So the graft is basically a tube that's made of a synthetic material.
Like a fabric tube.
Like a fab. Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
very strong and it's designed to last a long time.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Okay. So and then what about the other type of surgery, the EVI?
Right. So EVAR is a less invasive procedure, and in this case, they insert a catheter into an artery in the groin, and then they thread that catheter up to the aorta. The catheter has a stent graft attached to it, and once they get the stent graft in place, then they open it up, and it reinforces the weak spot in the aorta.
So they're like threading this little repair kit through your veins and arteries
That's exactly
to fix it. Wow. That's amazing. Okay, so I'm assuming with all of this, there's got to be a recovery period, right?
Yeah, there is. And it really depends on the type of surgery that you have. But, it can take several weeks or even months to fully recover.
Okay. So what kinds of things should people expect during that recovery?
Well, they'll probably have some pain and discomfort,
Okay.
and they'll need to take it easy for a while. But, the good news is that most people make a full recovery and they're able to go back to their normal activities.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
That is really reassuring to hear. It's incredible. We're talking about some really, really serious stuff here. But it sounds like if you're proactive, if you're paying attention to your body and you're working with your doctors, there's a lot of hope.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the key takeaways here. It's not just about understanding, the mechanics of what's happening in your body, but understanding why it's important and then feeling empowered to take action.
Yeah. Because, we hear these scary statistics, right? Like nearly 300,000 people undergo heart valve replacements every year. That's a lot of people.
It is. It's a huge number. And it just goes to show how important it is to be, really proactive about your heart health.
Yeah. It's not something that happens to, other people. It's something that could happen to anyone.
Yeah.
And that's why I think knowledge is so important. It's like with those aortic aneurysms, for example.
Hmm.
We were talking about how sometimes you don't even know you have them until it's almost too late.
Right.
But if you're aware of your family history, if you know the risk factors, if you're having those conversations with your doctor, you're much more likely to catch it early.
Absolutely. I mean, early detection is key when it comes to any health condition, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to, make small changes, to be proactive early on than it is to try to fix something once it's already become a major problem.
Absolutely. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Often.
100%.
Yeah.
So what are some of those things that people can do? Because we've talked about, the scary stuff, but let's
Yeah.
talk about what people listening can do right now to kind of take control of their heart health.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is lifestyle. Really focusing on living a healthy lifestyle.
Okay.
And that means eating a healthy diet, getting regular exercise, not smoking. All of those things can make a big difference.
So it's not just about, you know, like what you're doing in the doctor's office. It's about like your everyday choices.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's about taking care of yourself.
Yeah. It's like you're choosing to put, premium gas in your car versus
Yeah.
regular, right? Like it's going to run better if you're giving it what it needs.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about those choices a little bit more because I think one of the things that really struck me was when we were talking about those valve replacements. And I know it sounds like, okay, this is a medical decision, but at the same time, you're being presented with these two very different options, right?
Right.
You've got the mechanical valve, which is, it's like the workhorse. It could potentially last you a lifetime,
Yeah.
but you have to be on blood thinners.
Right.
And then you've got the biologic valve, which is great, but it might not last quite as long.
Yeah.
But you don't have to worry about the blood thinners. That's a big decision to make.
It is. It is a big decision. And I think it's important for people to really talk to their doctors about, what's the best option for them because, like we were saying before, it's not a one size fits all.
Right. It's about finding what's going to work for your life, for your body, for your circumstances.
Exactly.
And we've been talking a lot about the sort of the physical side of things,
Yeah.
but there's also the emotional impact, right?
Yeah.
Of being diagnosed with a heart condition, of needing surgery.
Mm.
That's got to be scary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's important for people to realize that it's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel overwhelmed and that there are resources out there to help them.
Yeah.
There are support groups, there are therapists who specialize in helping people cope with chronic illnesses. So, don't be afraid to reach out for help if you need it.
It's so important to remember that you're not alone. Like, there are other people who have been through this. There are people who understand what you're going through. And just having that support system, even if it's just one or two people, can make a world of difference.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about, having people to talk to. It's also about feeling empowered to advocate for yourself.
Yes.
Right? Like, don't be afraid to ask your doctor questions.
Yes.
If something doesn't feel right, get a second opinion. It's your body.
Right.
You have the right to be informed and to make the best decisions for yourself.
100%. You are your own best advocate.
Yeah. So if you take away anything from this deep dive, I hope it's that you feel empowered, that you feel informed, and that you know that there's hope.
Well said. Well said.
It's a lot to take in, right? It's like we've covered so much ground today talking about all this stuff, and it can feel a little overwhelming when you hear about, heart valves needing to be replaced and aneurysms. But I don't know about you, but I actually feel kind of empowered after learning all this.
Yeah, I think knowledge is really powerful in that way. It can help to alleviate some of the fear and uncertainty that we might feel.
For sure. And it's not about, like, becoming a doctor ourselves or anything. It's just about having enough knowledge to feel like we can be active participants in our healthcare.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to advocate for ourselves, right? Like knowing the right questions to ask.
Exactly. Okay. So I want to touch on something else that you said, which I think is really important, and that is this idea of listening to your body. Because that seems like, in a lot of ways, that's the first line of defense.
It really is. And I think sometimes we can get so caught up in our busy lives that we forget to just like tune in and listen to what our bodies are trying to tell us.
Yeah. And it's not just the physical stuff, it's the mental and emotional stuff too, right? Like
Right.
if you're feeling super stressed out, if you're anxious all the time, that takes a toll on your heart,
It absolutely does. Our mental and emotional health is just as important as our physical health, and they're all interconnected.
for sure. Okay, so as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I'm curious if you could give our listeners just one piece of advice, like one thing they can do starting today to really prioritize their heart health, what would it be?
I think it would be just to be proactive. Don't wait until you're having symptoms to start taking care of your heart. There are so many things that you can do right now, like we were talking about lifestyle changes, talking to your doctor to really make a difference in your long-term health.
Love it. It's about taking control. It's about taking charge of your health,
Yeah,
not just, waiting for something to happen.
exactly.
Well, I think this has been an amazing deep dive. I've learned so much.
Me too. It's been a pleasure.
I always learn so much from talking to you. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of heart health. And remember, knowledge is power. So keep learning, keep asking questions, keep advocating for yourselves, and we will see you on the next deep dive.